Hey, everybody. Today on the Daily AI Show, it's our weekly AI News Up where we make sense of what just happened and what's coming next. And what just happened, right? Yesterday, Gemini 2.5 Pro was dropped by Google. OpenAI did a surprise, like, hey, we're live streaming release of 4.0's native image generation. So goodbye, DALL-E, I guess is what we're saying. Goodbye, DALL-E. All right. Are we witnessing the start of a new AI UX war? Or are we just peeking into how multimodal models are going to change things? Brian keeps saying he wants to have a conversation about this is the real multimodal, fight me. So that might be a future show that we do. So this is the Daily AI Show. We're recording this live on March 26th. With me today are Jyunmi Hatcher, Andy Halliday, Karl, and I am your host, Beth Lyons. So who has the news story? Who wants to talk about Google Gemini drop? Has anyone had a chance to use it?
No.
Okay.
No, but I think it's an important indicator that behind the scenes, Google DeepMind is, quietly plodding ahead. Plodding's the wrong term. They're probably racing ahead. And we have an AI frontier model race in effect here still running, even though there's been a lot of talk about the scaling of the intelligence or reasoning and so on of these frontier models reaching a limit. Nonetheless, we saw a flurry of activity around improving the voice interactions, and everybody seemed to put forward their best efforts around voice. And now in the last couple of days, we've seen a number of players come forward with their best offerings when it comes to multimodal and particularly natively multimodal models that can process video, audio, tokens of any kind. They've been trained on all sorts, so they have much, much better image generation capabilities natively in that. And so we'll talk about some of those things. But what Gemini 2.5 Pro represents is a major step forward in coding and agentic type applications, reasoning and implementation. So what Google says it designed Gemini 2.5 to do that, supersedes what Gemini 2.0 flash thinking was just weeks ago, it seems like, where we talked about how important Gemini 2.0 flash thinking experimental and their other image generating capabilities were. Well, 2.5 was designed to excel at creating visually compelling web apps and agentic coding applications. So think about 2.5 as going up against Lovable and Replit and Claude as the leaders in the coding space. So it's just dropped. We haven't played with it. Nobody's even gotten to the point of talking about it, really. It's just announced now. But 2.5 has topped the LM arena, almost instantaneously. Actually, I'd like to share my screen and just show you the LM arena current status. Beth, while I'm bringing it up here, can you just explain what the LM arena is?
Sure. So the LM arena has models that are code named, and you get an opportunity, you can, if you go, you get two candidates. You don't know what they really are. You just know their code name, and you give them a prompt and they sort of duke it out. You decide which one you like. And then the arena decodes everything to get this ranking.
That's right. And so it's not based on its performance against any benchmarks, though 2.5 excels at many of the benchmarks, and I'll give you some numbers about that in a moment. But see here how Gemini 2.0 Pro Experimental was down here around 1380. DeepSeek R1 at 1360. You get 20 points of difference on 1400. And then you got GPT 4.5 preview jumping up to around 1400. same as Grok 3 preview, and then Gemini 2.5 Pro 2.0. I like that's kind of like a Vietnamese, you know, uh, lunch model. Okay, Gemini 2.5 Pro blasts onto the scene, adding another 10%. No, I didn't do that math in my head right, but look at this jump level to 1443, right? So really impressive. And let me just say a few other things about code editing. Google says Gemini 2.5 Pro scores 68.6 on Aider Polyglot, a major benchmark for coding capabilities, outperforming top AI models from OpenAI, Anthropic, and DeepSeek. But they hasten to point out that it's on SWE or SWE Bench Verified, as it's described, SWE Bench Verified, another coding benchmark. Gemini 2.5 Pro scores 64%, while Claude 3.7 Sonnet still scores 70%. So it's not quite as good on that particular test, but it does surpass 3.7 Sonnet on another test, Aider Polyglot.
Yeah, so I think I'm wondering, are they coming for not just lovable, but actually like Cloud 3.7 as the dominant model that's preferred by coders to use within their coding system, right? So it's Cursor with 3.7 as the brains behind Cursor, or choose your other Cursor flavor that you
Yes.
prefer.
Similarly, Replit uses 3.7 Sonnet as their don't bother using any other model as their advice in the interface. You will get better results with 3.7 Sonnet.
You can pick a different one, but we do not recommend it, and we will not be polite when you tell us it didn't work, but you use a different model. So, like, hey, follow our recommendations. Yeah.
Well,
So the other thing
it's
that
interesting. I was just gonna chime in really quick. It is interesting of where Google has to be positioned. They do have to fight on these multiple fronts because of how large they are as an organization and what is expected of them in terms of providing all tech to all people, right, or all use cases. Because OpenAI has been very clear that it's building up its consumer product, right? It's consumer-facing product. Um, and then Anthropic seems to be very clear on they want to be infrastructure, whether that be enterprise, coding, the building part of things. And so they just need to fight on those fronts. Now, OpenAI does have enterprise and those kinds of things. And, it is the largest of the AI specific companies. So, it may turn into the Google, but Google's in the position to where they had to play catch up because everybody already came out with great stuff, and they accomplished that. Now this could be the way to position themselves, like you said, Beth, for the coders and the builder side of things, while also integrating their own AI products into all of their consumer-facing things, whether it be search or workspace or any of those kinds of things. So yeah, they do look like they have to fight on multiple fronts, and I think that might be a push, a push for them because they realize they can't just focus on one. They platform side of things as well behind AWS and Microsoft.
I think
it's true.
the tough thing with what Google is trying to do, and it's I don't know. I when I'm reading how they position their new model, and they very, very focus on the benchmarks, I I'm assuming they're purely going after the developers, because half of the stuff they talked about doesn't mean much to regular people or regular business. It doesn't. It's like it won't resonate, because I think over the past 2 years, and I was having a conversation with Gareth on this. It's like the mind space of, I would say 97, 98% of the businesses I talk to, it is ChatGPT or nothing. There's a couple of Claudes in there, maybe one or two Gemini, but it's mostly ChatGPT or Copilot because the company did it. That's it. So the mind space of this is very difficult. And then I think also too, the amount of news that comes out every day about AI, I think because people just get numb to it and be like, okay, that's great, fantastic. That's just another model. That's this. Benchmarks mean nothing. I'm using this. That's it. Because I asked them, why do you use this model over the other? It's like, because it's free. And I'm like, and because I've been using it and it's synonymous,
Right.
literally synonymous with AI. So very, very interesting just seeing how the other models are now trying to target, I guess, the developers rather than, well, the mass market is very difficult to now get in there because OpenAI is just the big elephant. Very difficult to unseat.
Yeah, and I was saying before the show, this is rumor, and this is my like this isn't news. But I'm sort of laughing that has Logan Kilpatrick convinced Google to let him just control the drop schedule. So like OpenAI says, "Ooh, we got something secret we're dropping," and Logan's like, "Now, turn it now." Yep, boom. Hey, guess what? We drop a whole new model. They're just like updating their 4.0 model, which is kind of old.
I've used the model in AI Studio, and it's like, the thing is, though, it's hard outside of the benchmarks. It's hard to compare based on your individual use case. 'Cause you just,
Right.
I think once people there are people who love Copilot. I was just like, I don't know how, but that's their model. Be like, and then when they compare it to other ones, it's like, I like this one better because it just fits. So I'm not sure. Like, it feels like there is I don't know if it's a solidification of like, hey, I use this. I'm just going to use this because maybe all of them are kind of just going to end up equal in the end anyway. I have to wait 2 months, 3 months until a new model comes out or my model comes out and matches. So why would I?
Well,
Why would I switch?
that's a great point because, you get, of course, there's the whole, you got comfortable with the one that you tried out or you're in that ecosystem, right? And there's a lot of that, especially in Microsoft. It's like, oh, we live here. This is what we've been using for 20 years. We're already invested, yada, yada, and all those, that kind of thinking. But there does really seem to be that thought process of, all right, all of this is moving so quickly. So whatever I'm using, I'm just going to stick with until, something clearly, which is a better fit for me, that comes out. And the fact that you said earlier about, oh, I use this because it's free, that's a huge factor because everything's changing so quickly, right? No one wants to go all in on one thing if it's just going to change on them. But in the inverse, it's, can we spend the time to learn absolutely every version of something? So, yeah, exactly. There's not enough time. So it's like, oh, okay, this one seems to work for me. I'm going to keep working at it. They're going to come out with new stuff.
Yeah.
And that's funny because that makes me think of Apple, right? Because Apple's never really first on the scene with stuff. They always say, oh, we want it to be the perfect version of this.
Yeah.
Now, there's arguments, Siri, about how they approach things. But what I've noticed with OpenAI's releases and then the way that they talk about things and the way that they want this controlled drip of information and they want to be consumer focused and the various presentations that they have, I think OpenAI is becoming more like Apple. Live on our platform.
Yes.
Here's a new thing.
Yeah.
It's not the first thing. Native image processing. That's not new, right? That was talked about months ago. They just brought it out in response to, somebody else, a competitor releasing something. So it just may be this overall experience and ecosystem kind of play or strategy to just draw you in, and once you're there, you're there. I still go to ChatGPTs because I have a Plus account, and I'll try stuff there first. I'll ask my questions there first. Perplexity, when I know I'm specifically looking for, searching for information and things like that. Claude is coming up now that I'm doing more coding analysis and MCP stuff. So yeah, I think that environmental building, essentially, or ecosystem building is kind of where that focus is, and that reminds me of the Apple strategy.
So just to wrap up the Google thing, they also came out with a canvas, so you can see the code that you built and edit it within and they called it Canvas because that's apparently the name that wins. But so that was part of the update to the Google Advanced, Google One subscribers. There was news about Siri and Apple. Does anybody have that? They want to do a small
Before we jump from Google, I just wanted to do a 10-second addition, which is Google also rolled out real-time vision in Gemini,
Yes.
meaning you can point your camera at something and talk to Gemini about what it's seeing with your camera.
Is that Project Astra, right? They started doing that for
It's a piece of that. I don't think it's the full Astra, but it's a piece of that that's been implemented now. It's basically vision. It's adding vision to Gemini.
But is that only Android phones?
I don't know. It's so. I'll look that up while you guys are going on to Siri. Go ahead.
Because what we talked, Karl, you demoed it for us when it was only available in the AI Studio, right? Was like it can see. It's looking like it's inside the screen, looking at the screen. While you're looking at the screen, you can have that conversation.
No, it uses any smartphone camera.
Okay.
I canceled my Gemini subscription just because of all the things that would using it the least. I was like, I barely use this because I started using Grok more, started using I'm already have a pro subscription plus a Claude subscription. Like, which one does not belong here? Gemini. And then they come out and I'm like, but even then I'm like, I don't feel like going to just test it. I was like, because my subscription runs out, I don't know, like in a week or two. So I was like, that's fine. And I'm sure, again, one of these models is gonna come out with something, and it's gonna be. I'm like, you know what? I'll just wait and do my thing. And apparently, DeepSeek is coming out with V3. So if you're on DeepSeek, there's another one too. So right, so that's an exciting piece. So
V3's been out. It's V3.1. Let's call it V3.1. It's actually it's got a newer date. It's a V3 model, but it's the next drop of the V3 line.
Yeah.
And that Jyunmi, that can run.
I was just gonna wrap up the Apple thing. So essentially, everybody has been waiting for Apple Intelligence to really shine through, and Apple to release new version of Siri or updates to it or whatnot. But apparently they've dropped the ball on this and do not expect Siri to come out at least 26, probably 27. That this is a big internal issue, and people have said they've lost confidence in some of the executives and who's in charge of the AI program in Apple, and so there's going to be some shuffling around of executives there. So we'll see if they can get back on track. Now, it has been suggested by some of the people that I've collectively listened to, because there's so much news out there, I sometimes get them all mixed up on where the source is. But so I can't tell you who it was at this point. But the words seems to be out that this could be an opportunity for Apple to play catch up, is to do an acquisition, right? Early days, Apple has done tech acquisitions or acqui-hires and things like that in the past. And so this might be a good chance for them to catch up. And one of the things that was floated out there.
Siri was an acquisition.
Right. And so one of the things that was floated out there as maybe an outside, choice was Anthropic, because Apple technically has enough money and assets to potentially buy Anthropic at their valuation. But I mean, it would be a hard sell, of course. But that gets you to thinking, is there smaller players that could give them essential pieces of tech that they could then weave together or build upon to get that new program, instead of building it from scratch themselves, or trying to shoehorn in their own tech, like Siri. Oh, I didn't have this time. Okay, so
No, it's because Andy said the name too. So that's true, but and Justin said earlier in our chat, clearly Google and OpenAI listen to the show because we have said these things, and now they're coming out. But Karl, we were talking about Apple needed to purchase. Oh crap! What is the name of the thing that Microsoft purchased? Pi. There it is. Thank you very much. We were saying Apple needs to purchase Pi. Like it should be the new Siri. It's a great opportunity. And we were saying that a year ago.
Well, I think we were talking about how they need to, the one that makes the most sense. And I think there's a couple of podcasts that are talking about this. It's Anthropic makes the most sense, because Grok won't. OpenAI is not. Mistral maybe, but they need something, because although there was news that they spent over $1 billion in NVIDIA chips, so that's something, right? But I don't know if they have the talent, or they have because they are starting from behind. So, right. And, like with Apple, like you could oh, okay, that's fine, because they perfect things. But I'm like, AI is moving so fast. It's like, I don't know where we'll be by 2026, 27. So once you get your model, let's say, sorted out, and like the agent aspect, or you know what, if they were smart, let's bypass this whole thing, maybe turn Siri into an agent. Maybe that's a leap ahead of everybody to try to do something and go for that ultimate gamble rather than try to catch up.
Well, that's what makes, and that's one of the things that makes Anthropic such the best choice of acquiring, right? So it comes with comes with everything. They have all the talent. One nicely big package tied up in a nice bow. But the big thing that they bring is all of the agentic features already pre-built with MCP and those kinds of things. So it's way easier to integrate those existing systems into your workflow and your existing stack, because it's just additive. And then you work on making it more native. Here's the improved experience. But the catch up Anthropic would be fantastic for them. Do I think that's going to happen? Anthropic kind of wants, from what I've seen, they've got their own plan. They don't need an Apple, but Apple more needs them. And and Mistral is an interesting choice as well, but I think there's a lot more lift on the Apple side to get that working.
Yeah, I don't know if Apple would prefer an open source model.
That is part of the calculation there. They are built upon open source tech, though. So like their main system is a a Nix flavor, a Unix flavor, a Linux flavor. That's their main core. And all of their own stuff is based off of that. So, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be parallel development, some in-house stuff, and they don't necessarily. And once they do acquire Anthropic, that doesn't mean they can't take some of that stuff off of the open source side of things as well. So
You mean
that is part of it.
Anthropic is not open source, yeah.
So the other thing about this that I think, Karl, it's an interesting idea to sort of go direct to the agentic feature is that Apple already has the voice interface, right? Like that's set. Just like when our Lady Wiretap, when Alexa Plus comes out, they didn't need to do anything about the understanding conversation back and forth because that's already in that and that's already there. Apple also has Apple scripting, which is a very like esoteric, okay, I could somehow get these automations to work on my phone, but it's complicated and it's not fun. But if you have those two pieces already built in, now you're literally just wanting that intelligence layer. I think, yeah, Greg is saying it will be transparent, it'll be the OS. But yeah,
Or forget the buying. Like there's another thought. It's like, what? You already had that OpenAI partnership. Just make it a partnership. Like they will supply the intelligence. You will supply, because everyone's like, oh, where's Apple in this? I'm like, well, Apple is kind of more hardware than they were software, because they build phones, they build iPads, they build like Macs. It's like, it's a hardware company with software that they can integrate, but it's like, it's tough to ask that company to try to do that. I know Google is kind of like that, but that's fighting so many things on so many different fronts, right? It's very tough.
It would be a more vertically integrated strategy like NVIDIA is pursuing.
Yes.
NVIDIA dropped, a hybrid Mamba model this week that is, an entry into the race for improved inference costs. And so I want to weave off of what we've been discussing to just say, simultaneously, while all of these drops are happening, there was this release of O1 Pro from OpenAI, which is a more compute intensive version of its O1 reasoning AI. So, and compute intensive is the operative word here, because all of these reasoning models and agents are going to require much more inference compute time than the typical models are. And so that is when you put a task to an agent, it's going to want to use one of the most advanced reasoning models. And those reasoning models, like O1 Pro, it'll reason for 30 minutes. It's spinning the computers for 30 minutes to generate its plan of attack and, look at all the edge cases and figure out what, the best path forward is. That's costly. And that's why O1 Pro costs $600 per million output tokens when all these other models are down in the cents. Okay. So then, what NVIDIA did, and a number of others, by the way, is they're delivering a new model, a type of model. It's a hybrid between a transformer and a Mamba state space model. And so there's four different examples of that. Mistral put out a small model 3.1, small 3.1 Mistral, that is also a hybrid Mamba state space plus transformer model. The state space models and Mamba, we've talked about it on a former show, but it's probably worth recapping what that means for people who are listening. But it's much more efficient in terms of retaining context. So as agents and larger context windows become more important, transformers struggle in terms of cost and inference time. They struggle, latency, all those things. But a Mamba component in a mixture of those models in this hybrid architecture, that can reduce the cost of inference time significantly. So there's a race underway also to explore new architectures that go beyond the transformer models and balance reasoning capabilities and that demand on compute time with computational efficiency. And that's what these hybrid models are. Mamba Nemotron H from NVIDIA, that's a hybrid Mamba plus transformer model that they just launched. And so there's an example to weave back to what we were just talking about. There's an example of a company that's not afraid of investing their considerable war chest in both software and hardware, right? And I think Apple certainly has the treasure chest to do that. The question is, are they deliberately and strategically saying, let's let them all fight it out until they get to the finest models possible where we really reach the limit, and then we'll do a distillation of those that will serve us in our ecosystem of users.
Absolutely. And just a slight weave button on that, the DeepSeek v3.1 or the new version of DeepSeek is people have said you can run it locally, natively on a $10,000 Mac Studio computer. So that is another piece of being able to bring a really powerful system in-house, make it local, make it private. Because while DeepSeek is a Chinese company, the code is open source, right? The weights and things like that. So you're pulling them in, and you get to customize it however you want. The questions for people about putting information into DeepSeek to go to China is always when it's hosted in the cloud. And speaking of that, here's my weave. And it's also loop back to previous conversations. Perplexity when TikTok was likely going to shut down for US users. Perplexity was like, hey, I'll buy you, call me. It turns out that they've really been thinking about that. So now it's a real proposal. And they may have been thinking about that before, but that is another play. And the reason that's connected is that Perplexity created the 1776 version of DeepSeek's V3 model so that it could be run locally in the US and give you correct answers about Tiananmen Square.
Yeah, let me just comment on the advent of oh my gosh, I just had a brain skip there. Give me a second. Yeah. So Beth, you were saying what were you talking about just now?
I was talking about DeepSeek.
Not having a stroke, by the way. I'm just old. Go.
DeepSeek V3. And that it can run
Perplexity on TikTok. Okay, so what I want you spun me out on the DeepSeek side of it. Perplexity did make a run at acquiring the US version of TikTok, and that made so much sense because one of the things that makes Grok and XAI so threatening in this race at the top is that they have access to incredible data, all of the data on X, all of the data from Tesla, and all of that data makes for a significant advantage when you're doing training of models and also accessing these. Perplexity is saying, look, we want to place at this top level table and we want TikTok data. And we want it to be a part of the Perplexity platform. And so TikTok plus Perplexity, I say go, go, go. Why? Because we want somebody out there with access to that level of data, especially real-time, social media flow data, just like X has, in order to put a bulwark up against X's domination of the space.
Absolutely. It's a great move. I agree. And there's the new deadline is April 5th, maybe. for whether TikTok is going to sunset or not. The chat has gone, say, in a different direction. Karl or Jyunmi, what?
In answer to Jude's comment, he said, TikTok has data. What kind? Oh, they have a tremendous amount of data. Many, many influencers of significant note. Just take, for example, scientists and epidemiologists, and people are in real time delivering the highest level of their knowledge in short video format today, what's happening today. And that kind of data is really important to the flow of information in the world.
Right. And not to mention consumption data, data on the
interest data. Like, what are people interested in?
Fred, we were talking about that yesterday because you have information about what people are searching, right? That was the Chegg conversation, that Chegg knew what students were looking for and how they were phrasing it and all of that kind of stuff. TikTok has that too. Great.
All right, jump over to images. Like I saw a news item, Jyunmi. Jyunmi's our expert when it comes to audio-visual media. And there was a release of Rev Image 1.0. Rev, it offers competitive pricing and impressive prompt adherence, which is one of the key things about the advances in those kinds of models. It's got realism, versatility, potentially outperforming rivals like Midjourney and Ideogram. And at $5 for 500 credits, it's affordable. So, but there was no information or news about the Rev team and where they came from.
What happened?
Oh, I see you.
I don't know what happened to everybody. And this all was like for so long.
Somebody hit the wrong button there.
I don't know what was going on, but I was like, hey, how come it's just me? Yet Andy is talking.
Beth, you're muted there.
Okay, so we just had a tech fart. Thank you for the chat. And it's always me that hits the wrong button. I spotlighted Karl and I could not figure out how to unspotlight. So thank you, Karl, for taking us all off.
Andy, great, I didn't take anybody off. I just sat here and I'd be like, what's going on? And then all of you went off. And I was like, oh, okay, great. That's fantastic.
Yeah. All right, Andy.
Okay, let's get back on track here. Here's another little blip. I was going to say fart, but it's blip. OpenAI has announced that ChatGPT is building connectors to Google Drive and Slack. But I think importantly, ChatGPT will radically simplify the ability to integrate its now advancing capable models to Google Drive as a resource. And so I think that's really important.
Did they say what level of integration? Because you currently can draw upon your Google Drive for files to upload. Are they saying this is just going to be more of a database that you can always draw from when you
don't have anything other than for that? That's the sort of the blip of news that I caught on that one thing. But I would just say all of these integrations with the external tools in order to pursue agentic tool use by the main models are going to become more and more like fully fledged APIs with all the possible functions that are currently delivered via API. Those will be accessible to the models in the MCP or other standard interface that will allow the models to work with those tools directly across the full range of their capabilities.
Yeah, that would be super interesting if you could provide an API type backend connection to your Google Drive, and then you could use your Google Drive as your document repository for your sort of mini RAG type system. And it's whenever you ask ChatGPT for either a particular file or information from your set of files, then it would just automatically bring it in because it would have like a service count access to whatever your folder you're sharing and things like that. Instead of having to go into OpenAI.
And that's consistent with OpenAI's kind of closed, walled garden kind of approach to the delivery of their overall platform. But they're saying, okay, we're not going to invent a new database come spreadsheet facility for you. Google's got that. We're just going to integrate with Google and you can use your Google Drive.
Okay, so we haven't talked about 4.0, and I'm going to say we're not going to talk about the native image generation a lot about 4.0 because on Friday we are going to talk about the native image generation. We thought it was just going to be about Gemini and Grok, but now we'll include 4.0 as well, and whatever else gets dropped somehow between now and then, maybe. But let's go into a lightning round. What stories have we not covered that you think are important? I know Jyunmi's got some science ones. Karl, do you have a story that you want to talk about?
I think you already talked. Have you talked last week? Because I wasn't here about the McKinsey report of how
No.
organizations are rewiring to capture value.
No.
No. Is that okay? So I think this is probably something we want to create a show on, but maybe just, I guess, like a little teaser. Share my screen here. And so this is the March 12th, 2025 State of AI, how organizations are rewiring to capture value. And a couple of just key points here. Degree of centralization I'm assuming, and I didn't read this report totally, I think this is enterprise still. And one of the charts I kind of like here, large organizations are following more adoption scaling best practices. So you can kind of see I guess percentage of respondents. I'm not even sure if this is this is this is 30. So establish a dedicated team to drive AI adoption, so 52%. Have regular internal communications about Gen AI, 42%. Senior leaders are actively engaged in AI, driving AI adoption, 37%. Role-based capacity, 31%. And then so on. Part of why I like targeting small to medium-sized businesses is because these numbers, and it's such a blue ocean in that the smaller businesses, smaller organizations, but with ones with 500 or more, even they don't have as much. I think it's like I sometimes we're under the impression everybody's using AI, but if you think about it from a business perspective, this chart shows it's not everybody, and the only ones who are really pressing have massive budgets behind it. And that this is again just based on McKinsey's survey, so it's not like
I think this is the one that I heard about. I haven't read this, so just for clarification. But I heard that there was a questionable point, though, is one of these McKinsey surveys that just came out is based off of data back in July. So that from where I was hearing it, that gave it pause because how can you tell any trends in AI from July of 2024? But I only bring that up because if this is that latest report, take that with a grain of salt. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you can kind of see here, right? Use of AI and then use of Gen AI, same kind of point. But I don't know what they mean by use of Gen AI. If someone uses free ChatGPT, I would imagine that would be considered use of AI, right? So use of AI in multiple functions and 5 or more functions, still kind of low. Again, and I'm assuming because of McKinsey, this is pretty much mostly enterprise. So 3 or more, 1 or more functions, 2 or more functions, second half of 20. So everything points up, right? Everything is pointing up. And I guess it makes sense. So I was listening to this today, which is interesting. It's about this. So obviously marketing and sales is the easiest one to use because of the content creation capacity. But the software engineering is interesting because of all the advances. We just heard Gemini, right? 2.5. Its benchmarks in coding is very, very high. Sonnet 3.7. But to see very professional services 9, 8, 13. So you're like, why aren't these software engineers in professional services, media, telecom, financial services, energy, using AI a lot more? You'd think this piece would be
because some of them are still running on COBOL.
Right.
Okay, but that's a language. AI should also be able to like kill your COBOL. Like I could program in COBOL like nobody.
It can, but just the very fact that they're still on COBOL means that company's not keeping up with the times.
And here's the anecdote on that. Like, so we visited some businesses that are just like, when we see their systems, you're like, I don't know. A big piece in business AI adoption of AI is integrations, right? It has to integrate with your systems. So outside of Microsoft Copilot, if you really want to do some like AI automations or other things that take it beyond just the regular large language model use cases, you have to think about integrations. And a lot of these companies, you're right, Andy, when you start seeing all the various tech stacks, you're like, a lot of them are third-party proprietary or things that you've never heard of. And you're like, what does this even have an API that I can barely connect to? And what exactly data is coming out from that API, if any, that is useful for a large language model or any type of AI to use? And that's why sometimes it's difficult to do adoption outside of just using large language models, because their systems are way too niche that a simple like Zapier, Make, N8N doesn't have that integration into it.
Yeah, and you can write your own connectors to those things. MCP is a possible solution, but that means you have a pretty sophisticated, a sort of API engineer thinking IT department, and most small companies don't have that really close.
Yes.
Hey, I wanted to jump over to another important bit of news, which is that the release of O3 from OpenAI was a major advance in the reasoning capability on the trajectory towards achieving AGI. And if you remember, when they made the announcement about that, they brought on the person who was managing the ARC AGI test, which is the most advanced test for human-like reasoning. And we did a show about it, and we show you there's really visual puzzles that require multi-step reasoning by the model to understand and output the correct match to what the expected sort of IQ test result should be. You have to pick one of those. So now they've just released a new version of ARC AGI 2, and it adds a new metric, which is efficiency. Because when O3 did its incredible advance on the original ARC test, it did so at a tremendous inference cost, right? It had to think long and hard, and the compute time that was required to get to the benchmark performance that it presented was thousands of dollars per question. Okay, so now the new ARC AGI test requires that the model demonstrate efficiency. right? It's important because now we need to figure out how to make these things affordable, how to make reasoning and agentic long context performance affordable. And so this is the test to try to do that. AGI 1, the one was unbeaten until December of 2024. This is how recent it was. O3 was announced with Arc AGI just 5 months ago, 4 months ago, maybe.
Yeah.
And now the question is, can AI accomplish the tasks at a reasonable cost? And right now, that Arc AGI 2 performance dropped all of the major models down because of this efficiency metric, dropped all the major models down to low single-digit percentages on performance on that test. Whereas I believe O3 had performed on the original Arc AGI, sort of artificial general intelligence test, had performed upwards of 80%.
Yeah.
It was between 60 and 80%. I forget what it was. Okay. So anyway, new test for us.
Cool. Jyunmi, you have science stories, and we have a request for the big booming echo voice.
AI in science. Okay. All right. I know we're coming up on our time here, but I will try and get through these as best I can. All righty. AI in science, my favorite stories. This is where I think the applied and future sight really comes from. And the first story is coffee making robot breaks new ground. Nice pun. For AI machines. All right. So we have already seen robots, make coffee, flip burgers, these kinds of things already. But what makes this one special, and this is coming out of the University of Edinburgh, is that they have created a cutting edge AI with their robot arm to make coffee in a somewhat changing environment. So the idea is you have your coffee arm and you have all of your bits and pieces in your kitchen, and it will take a look at everything, realize, oh, okay, well, here's the coffee, here's the cup, here's the hot water and all those kinds of things, and go ahead and make yourself a cup of coffee. Now, using their AI, they're able to, or in most cases, I should say, lay the context here. In most cases, everything is very precise. So all the existing robot versions of making food or making things is all, this is exactly here, this is exactly this much, and does not variate from that. You must have everything where it is for the robot and AI to recognize it. Well, this AI can take in those variables. So if someone moves a coffee mug or moves the coffee to a different part of the table or any of those kinds of factors, it takes a quick look. Oh, okay, the coffee moved over there. I'm going to have to go grab the coffee from there. The mug wasn't put in the right place. And I'm sure it will complain to its coworkers by waving around and then go put the coffee cup back where it's supposed to, guy, and then go grab the coffee cup and make your coffee. And so this is a huge jump in that ability to work in the same space as other people, because it allows for that variation or those unseen circumstances that are going to give pause to all the existing robotic coffee makers and other kinds of things like that. So that's number one. So our robot arms are going to be able to make our coffee even if we don't put the mug back in the right place. The second one is we've talked about how AI is helping in the mundane parts of science. And this is like, for example, chemical analysis, right? Everyone has seen the images of a scientist, a scientist sitting at a table in a clean room and just taking a pipette and dropping it down, taking another one, dropping it down, then feeding those samples into an analyzer, looking at it at the microscopic level, pulling out, writing down all the information, and then going on to the next one. And that eats up a huge amount of time, right? And so we've heard stories of companies that are starting up to have that, robotic being able to do the pipettes and, advancing AI to being able to recognize what needs to be filled and stuff like that. Well, Florida State University has been able to create a machine learning tool that can identify chemical composition. And their example is dried salt solutions, just from an image with 99% accuracy. All right. So, what this means is the part that eats up the most time is the molecular analysis of whatever chemical that you're analyzing. This can do it from looking at the solution, right? It's dried salt solution for right now. But if you can get a 99% accuracy, which of course will improve with time, this is the worst that it'll ever be. That cuts down on the amount of time and equipment and cost that you need to do chemical analysis, because you don't need those giant, 2-ton machines to process all of this. And one of the reasons why Florida State was developing this is because they were working for a NASA project, because you can't put a giant analyzer onto the space station or the shuttle or a rocket or whatnot, and to be able to do that analysis, because weight is at a premium, right? And so since they've developed this machine learning tool, 99% accuracy from just taking the image, analyzing the image. So it cuts down on, and this is all in this idea that they're trying to democratize this part of science and this part of the field. So 99% accuracy now, not needing the, super expensive, super heavy equipment to do the analysis. It means you could probably get this to where it'll run in the back of your van or your garage, those kinds of setups. So that would allow a lot more labs, a lot more smaller labs, and maybe even smaller organizations to run their own analysis or even their in-home analysis. Remember when 3D printers used to be the size of warehouses and cost you, hundreds of thousands of dollars? Well, now you can get a good one for $200 and you can print, pretty much anything that you need that's on a physical object. Same kind of concept. So that's what got on the radar for me, is this is going to help democratize that whole chemical side or chemistry side of science. Now, and finally, the third one that is a little more out there and almost sounds on the cusp of sci-fi is from Virginia Tech, created a revolutionary blueprint to fuse wireless technologies and AI. And so before I read this article, I hadn't really thought about this use case, right? We talked about Gen AI is going to touch on every industry and every aspect of life, whether it's business or creative or whatnot, right? Well, one of the big things is the IEEE, which is the Institute of Electrical Engineering, something or other. What is it? What's it called here? Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineering. Sorry, there's the third E. And so they recently had a meeting, because they're the guys who talk about
Oh no. All right. So there we go.
Sorry,
Welcome back.
that's my 1 hour, my 1 hour mark. Okay. Sorry, really quick. So they're the guys who come up with the Wi-Fi standards, right? And they're running to actual technical limitations of what the next, 15, 20 years of Wi-Fi standards is coming up, because networking can only grow so large and being able to handle so much bandwidth and whatnot. But what they needed was a world model, the concept of being able to make those decisions. So then they come up with a blueprint that creates sort of a telecom brain, right? This would be the advanced AI model that would handle the routing and moving things around, data packets around and things like that. So maybe sci-fi scary when you have an AI who's in charge of all of your data transmission, but it's what they're looking at to advance what the next levels of wireless telecommunication is going to be. Okay, cool. Sorry, I'll leave it there. That took a little longer than I expected.
All right. No worries. Thanks, everybody. So tomorrow, what we have coming up is vibe coding. So what is vibe coding? Are you vibe coding? Are we vibe coding? We are going to reveal everything and chat about it. Friday, we're talking about the image generation, as I talked about before. We'll look at Gemini. We'll look at Grok, or image editing, actually, also. Gemini, Grok, and 4.0. And yeah, have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. And that's a wrap for us.
Aloha.